Welcome back. You are watching KTN News on Worldview here. Many thanks for staying with us. At this point, we will take a look at stories that have been making headlines on the international front. And joining me in studio now is Trix Ngado to help us go through that. Good morning, Trix. How are you?
Akisa. I'm fine, thank you. So we're starting off with The Guardian. That's leading with a very unfortunate story. 4 Iraqi boys apparently died at the hands of British soldiers who forced them, they are drowned because they had, I think it was some sort of punishment. They just wanted to soak them because they suspected they were looters. So the UK is apologizing. Apology from the MOD over Iraqi boys drowning at the hands of UK soldiers. So I think they just wanted to give them a good soaking, teach them a lesson. But when they were being soaked in that canal that was full of water, they drowned and lost their lives. They were young boys, I think 15, just teenagers. So this is, of course, they're putting the blame squarely on the UK soldiers, because when they noticed that these boys were getting some difficulties, that they were drowning, they didn't help. They just let them drown. So this is a huge story on The Guardian. So let's scroll and see what's happening on this page. There's also another story on Donald Trump, who his campaign has finally admitted, according to The Guardian, that Barack Obama is an actual United States citizen. I mean, it's taken them long enough.
How long?
I know. So Donald Trump was actually the head of the so-called Birther movement. That was a movement that was trying to discredit Barack Obama's citizenship. They were insisting that he was Kenyan and not American. So it has just slipped into this current campaign, and they were still saying that this guy is not an American. He was trying to run away from the question, even though Barack Obama came up with his birth certificate. He was born in Hawaii, which is part of the United States. So finally, they've said that he is actually a United States citizen. Of course, that's not really news. We all know that.
I know. How long did it take them?
Took them long enough. So let's scroll down on this page and see what's happening here. So we're having Osborne to chair the partnership and a question over May's commitment. So Osborne was the former head of the exchequer of the UK, the Treasury. So he's now going to be to chair a partnership amid questions over May's commitments. So in terms of what's happening in terms of Britain leaving the EU. Remember, Theresa May, the Prime Minister of the UK, was against leaving the EU. So, you know, you're having someone who was against it leading the country into the same
exodus.
The exodus that she was not really for. Then down here, the story I was talking about, campaign admits Barack Obama was born in the US. It's not news. Then Hilary Clinton back campaigning after illness. So there has been a lot of speculation on her health. The Republicans took that and ran with it, trying to paint her as an unfit candidate and someone who would not be the right president, you know, in terms of her health. But of course, it's been a 5-day rest period, and now she's up again.
And it has taken a toll on her because of the kind of polls we're getting.
Yeah, you know, all along, Americans had a problem with trusting Hilary Clinton. And so the fact that she was not open enough to say, okay, I'm going through this, I am sick. So this just fed into their fears of this is not a trustworthy candidate. Then down here we're having an Italy grappling with the suicide of a woman who was taunted over revenge porn. So revenge porn is this strange trend whereby people who have been dating or who have been intimate get when they fall out now, so one of them decides to release the footage of whatever they were doing in private. So this woman,
and it's a trend,
exactly, especially in Western countries. So of course, when it's released online, the women are the most affected. Affected. So this resulted in her suicide. So of course, Italy is grappling with this horrible type of social behavior. Then we're having China phobia. State media dismisses fictitious security concerns after Hickley decision. So Theresa May kept us questioning why the UK is so eager to work with China. And of course, there was a deal on a nuclear plant that was delayed for so long because of this concern. So they're just calling it China phobia. There was no huge concern about the security of working with China, but Theresa May was not really for it. She was not very eager to go into this deal so far. So it delayed for a while, and China became very agitated because why are they being so cautious while working with China?
Okay.
The US has also questioned China over its security and alleged that they were actually trying to hack them and get documents that are very sensitive and classified. Let's move on to the next paper. The Washington Post is leading with a story on Trump. So Trump is apparently, according to this paper, bullish as polls rise and won't say Obama was born in the US. So you remember the Guardian is saying that his campaign is actually admitted that Obama was born in the US, but according to the Washington Post, they're saying in an interview, the GOP nominee suggested that he's not eager to change his pitch and refused to say whether he'd change his mind about his long-refuted suggestion that President Obama is not a U.S. citizen. And Trump's campaign issued a statement late Thursday saying that he does believe that Obama was born in Hawaii. Right. So that's the same issue. Let's move down and see. So Trump is still on the top headlines. So Trump scaled back tax plan projected to add less federal debt and deliver fewer benefits. So Trump has touted himself as the right guy to lead, to revive the U.S.'s economy and
make America great again.
Yeah, and create more jobs, cut down on working with China and Mexico, and bring back jobs to the UK. Yeah. So they're just breaking down the implications of his tax plan and the policies and see. But according to them, this is not going to do as much as the Trump campaign wants us to believe. Then you're having Hilary Clinton returning to the trail. Many are one illness away from losing a job. So they're taking a look at how the implications of her ill health had on her campaign, and how, you know, now Hilary Clinton was in the lead quite significantly, but now Donald Trump is closing in, maybe because, like you said, of this.
In the U.S. politics, when it comes to leadership, age and health seems to matter a lot to the voters,
and
as
actually,
opposed to this part of the world.
Because this part of the world, it seems like the older you are, the more
the stronger you are, qualified.
Yeah. So, but apparently, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are some of the oldest candidates ever to vie for presidency. The youngest was of course, JFK, who was 43 years old. So still, I mean, when you look at the ages, they're still both the oldest. Yes. So it's not really an issue, as opposed to, you remember, with Barack Obama and his opponent John McCain. Yes. That was a very huge gap. Yeah. So let's move on to the next paper and see what's making headlines. The New York Times says voters took a look at Trump as both risky and bold as polls find, which is true. He's very bold, even though the things he said rub a lot of people the wrong way, but at least he comes up and says it. So he's not really opposed to, he's not very politically correct, but at the same time, the things he says, for example, the building a wall to separate Mexico and the U.S., some of the things are not very, very perceived well by some groups, which are supposed traditionally Republican supporters, and of course, being the risky, he's now sidelining a lot of parts of the electorate, and he's actually threatening to work with North Korea and Putin and these countries and presidents who have been seen as not really close to the U.S. They're not very close allies. Then let's move on to the next paper and see what we are having. We're having the China Daily. Let's scroll down. They have interesting pictures at the top, and down here we're having Zika boosts mosquito net exports. Well, clearly because it's caused by mosquitoes, so of course a
blessing in disguise for some people.
For some people, especially manufacturers of the nets, the treated nets. So this is interesting because while it's causing a lot of concern on one end, it's good business for people on the other. Then you're having smart back transition continues. So you're having these robots in China that sort of like ATMs, but you can communicate with it, tell it what you want, and just be able to do some transactions. I know, to come up with something like that. Yeah, then we're having the industrial style canteen surprises university students. So that's an interesting story right there. While Britain is recording the warmest September day since 1911. So that's good news, because the UK is Britain is usually very cold. So I guess it's good for them. They must be enjoying what must be really hot, but to us maybe it's just normal weather. Yeah. Let's move on to the New York Times and see what's, not the New York Times, but the New Delhi Times right there, the last paper.
From India?
Yeah, that's from India. So they're telling us about Clinton's pneumonia. So she has returned to the campaign after resting with pneumonia. The letter was released yesterday that said that the pneumonia was mild, so it's not as bad as some people might see. And of course, she's now faced with the arduous task of trying to widen the gap between her and Republican Donald Trump. As of now, he is closing in, but we'll see. It's I think 7 or 8 weeks to go, so there's still a lot of time, and then we're having some Brexit issues there, just trying to figure out the right way to leave the EU for Britain, and to, everyone is looking out for their best interests.
All right.
I think that's all we have for time for today on.
All right, thank you very much, Trix. That was a good one. Thank you very much for letting us in on some of the stories that are making headlines on the international papers. Trix Ngado, always here on Worldview at 9 and 3 p.m. We just tell you what other papers have given priority, especially on the international front. All right, let's now get into our discussion that is on the U.S. campaigns. The White House race could be decided in the Rust Belt, a vast, decaying former industrial powerhouse in the United States Midwest and Northeast, where Hilary Clinton and Donald Trump are battling for the support of working-class white voters. Latest opinion polls put Hillary ahead with just 2 points at 46% and Trump at 44%. Trump has been surging forward in the last 10 days.
Don will vote for Donald Trump in November, but he doesn't like either of the main presidential candidates in the upcoming election.
Well, between the two, I mean, no one seems to like either one of them that much, but between the two of them, I just feel like he's the best of the two, lesser of the two evils.
Many voters in rural Ohio and Pennsylvania feel the same way. Their support for the Republican candidate, less of a vote for Trump as one against Hillary Clinton.
It's definitely against Hillary. I'm definitely voting for Trump.
I don't believe in what Hillary stands for. I think out of the two, he is the lesser of two evils.
In this region known as the Rust Belt, you can still see the scars of a ravaged economy. The local area used to thrive thanks to coal mines and steel mills. Most closed down over the past several decades. So Trump's promise to bring back jobs outsourced to Mexico and China has struck a chord with the local unskilled white workforce.
But if somebody comes out and sounds strong and thumps their chest and so we're going to immediately, within a month, we're going to bring jobs back, it appeals to people when they are desperate. And I don't blame individuals for that. But that is a problem because it's not the way the global economy works.
Both Ohio and Pennsylvania used to be Democratic bastions, but have become two crucial swing states. White working-class voters could be the ones to tip the balance. But in the big cities, and especially amongst the black community, voters are remaining loyal to the Democrats.
African Americans, both in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, really are what make up the Democratic Party base in that state of Pennsylvania. And it's very important for Democrats to kind of turn out the vote in large numbers to ensure that the rest of the state, which typically leans Republican, doesn't go Republican.
Clinton currently leads in the polls in Pennsylvania thanks to these black votes. But in Ohio, Donald Trump is catching up. Both candidates continue to campaign tirelessly in the region, hoping to win these two key states.
All right, let's now take a look at what exactly is happening in the U.S., the politics surrounding it, the intrigues, and why Donald Trump is closing the gap with Hillary Clinton. The latest polls show that Hillary Clinton has 46% and Donald Trump could get a 44%. That is a 2% margin there. And from the previous polls, the gap was 5%. So now joining me in studio is Abel Ayeko. He is a researcher to just help us understand the intrigues that are in the U.S. politics with just 2 months ahead of the elections. Very many thanks for joining us on Worldview, Abel.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
2%. Trump is closing in. What is he doing right?
Trump is a funny character.
Very.
And yes, and what he's doing is, number one, he's toned down the kind of rhetoric he had early on in the campaign. So if we can say he's appearing more presidential. And then he has a quality that I think is very, very difficult for Hillary to show to the voters. He's authentic, he's himself. And of course, what he's been able to do is to dent the image of Hilary Clinton.
Hillary.
Yes, and it's working. It's working for him. That is why the numbers have been going down in terms of difference between himself and the lady.
The incident barely 5 days ago at the 9/11, where Hilary Clinton almost fainted, so to speak, raised a lot of questions about her health, and will Donald Trump really ride on this particular health issue with, could we say that this contributed to the closing in on the gap for Donald Trump, the health issues that Hillary Clinton has?
Well, to some extent you can say it did. But then again, earlier on, before this happened, the Democrats worked very hard to paint Trump as the one who's not willing to disclose his health records and all that. So Americans were expecting something big to be released concerning the health of Trump. Now the opposite happened.
The opposite happened.
In a practical sense. He almost fainted, and Americans were able to say that. So Trump became now the honest one. He's healthy, and Democrats are trying to get at him for no reason. But Clinton is the one who has a problem, and you can see she almost fainted. So Americans were like, okay, looks like Trump is honest. The lady could be sick. So that is, it's also assisted in planting seeds of doubt in the minds of Americans. Now they're shifting to Trump, who happens to appear to be more honest. And if you can remember, early on in the campaign, Hillary was painted as a dishonest character.
Yes.
Now that is a narrative that has been advanced by what's happening. It's not helping at all. Yeah, but what I expect is, at the end of the day, is for her to win. She's likely to win at the end of the day in November. But it's going to be tough. It's not going to be, yes. She has to intensify her campaigns, and then she has to work very hard to show Americans that she's an honest person. She's going to be honest. And of course, there's the issue of emails, which keeps on coming up
Yes,
again.
it keeps recurring.
And again and again. And expect Trump to amplify that. And he's very good at doing that. He'll be talking about crooked Hillary at every step of the campaign until November.
Wow. So when you've just mentioned that Donald Trump has toned down his rhetoric, but initially, the very first time he announced he will be running, everyone was like, this won't go far. Then the guy just surges on and on with the rhetoric, with the absurd remarks he keeps having about almost everything, with the insults, but he still got the numbers. Was toning down a good idea for him? Because looking at where he's come from, it's worked for him. So what is at stake for him that really means he has to tone it down?
Now, you know, the nominations, the primaries are very unique in the United States because the participants are basically the very, very extreme voters.
Yes.
Now, if you're a Democrat, if you're seeking the Democratic ticket, you have to be very liberal so as to welcome all the liberal voters, talk about gays, talk about lesbians and all that, and minorities. Now, if you are conservative, you have to go to the extreme right. That is what he did. So he appeared to be racist. He abused Mexicans. He said they're rapists and drug dealers and all that.
He'll build a wall.
So the white southern voters from states like Oklahoma, talk about Texas and Arizona, listened to him because they have an immigration problem and they rallied behind him. So that was meant to make him win the primaries, and he did.
So what we are saying is that this was a strategy.
Yes. Now he's shifting to the middle. That is what you need to do as a candidate to win the moderate voters, the independents, and all that. So he had a problem actually shifting from the extreme right to the center. But I think he's mastered the art of doing that. And Trump, you know, is a showman.
Yes, definitely.
He knows how to do that.
Definitely.
So
Always
now,
tells the show.
yes, the extreme rhetoric has disappeared. He's appearing more presidential, and that is why his numbers are going forward. They're surging.
What things do we expect to see? It's 2 months to the general election. What exactly do we expect to see?
Now, Democrats have very strong assets in terms of campaigners. Of course, you know the magic man, Obama himself.
Yes.
And talk about Joe Biden, who is very, very much loved by middle-class voters. And Michelle. So at first, you know, they came out and assisted her. She got a very big bump after the convention. And because of the perceived, actually it's evident, the weakness that is now appearing, they're likely to come on board. Expect Obama to come out and rally blacks. I think Hillary will get up to around 90% of the black votes. And
Thanks to Obama.
Thanks to Obama. And then, of course, Joe Biden will come out and tell middle-class Americans that the person who's going to champion for your rights is not Trump, but Hillary. So that's going to make a big difference. And then again, the shift that has happened now is not likely to continue because I think most Americans have made up their minds now. And as we move forward, Americans are becoming more liberal. They're accepting different elements in their culture. So that is not working for the Republicans. So expect that to be static, and I think she'll win with a very small.
You seem to be very sure.
Yes, yeah, she's going to win. That is, it's going to happen. But Trump is not going to make.
If she does not, you're the first person I'll call.
It's okay. I'll be available. I'll show up and take responsibility for it. She'll win. Trust me on that.
But from a story we've just run, it shows that there is the question of the working class white people that, so to speak, could be a swing vote. What are some of the aspects in the American culture, the groups of people or the states that will be very crucial in this particular election?
Now, working class Americans mind about jobs, they mind about the economy, and now the biggest problem is what? The kind of narrative Democrats have been running since the time of Obama when he came to office. Of course, he promised jobs. He's delivered, of course, but you know, it's not been what everyone expected. So Trump is working very hard to tell them, I'm going to be the jobs president. And to some extent, some are listening. You know, he keeps on saying, we're losing to China, to Mexico, to what? Yeah. So you say it again and again and again, you make it a chant. Some people buy it. And of course, the insecurities of losing jobs and all that, and that is the issue of immigration. I've stayed in the US for a while, and the Mexicans don't do the kind of jobs Americans love doing. They actually work in the farms, the kind of jobs Americans don't do. But Trump has managed to convince them that the Hispanics come and take their jobs. So Hillary is not going to be the candidate who's going to make sure the working class white Americans take their jobs back. It's Trump. So that is where the problem comes in. So Hillary has to make it very clear that as a melting pot, we have to be welcoming to everyone. And then it's not because of Hispanics that we don't have jobs. It's about the economy. Yes, when America is doing very well, everyone can have a job. But again, that is not going to be very beneficial to Trump because Hispanics make around 25%.
A very huge number.
Yes.
Very huge number.
So I expect Hillary to do very well, up to like, let's say, maybe 70%. And that is going to be very useful in states where there are huge portions of Hispanics. Talk about places like Pennsylvania itself, talk about states like Texas, and which has been for Republicans, but it's likely to shift to actually, I think, Obama and Minnesota. So expect now Clinton to benefit from that. So the defining factor, I think, is going to be blacks and Hispanics. They are going to be for Democrats overwhelmingly, and that will be the difference. If it was just white voters, I think Trump could have given a hell of time.
Of course, because we've seen many of Trump's supporters are whites.
White. Yeah, and that doesn't work very well when you're supported by just white.
So pretty much what would Trump need to do to swing this vote?
I think it's too...
I know it's an uphill task.
Yeah, for me it's too late because, you know, he has a history of being racist in his businesses. At some point he was not willing to allow blacks to work there. And he made a very bad statement at the beginning of the campaigns when he was seeking the nomination. He dismissed all the Mexicans as rapists and murderers and drug dealers. It's very difficult to undo that. Very, very difficult. So in those constituencies, I think it's done for him. So he has to work very hard and now talk about the white working class Americans. And I think it's done. Yeah, so the 2% is as much as the difference can be.
Abel, the American system of electing a president is one of the most complicated we have. Kindly, if you could just take our viewers through the process of electing the president up to the Electoral College until now, so to speak, we see the white smoke. I know that happens with the Pope, but now when it's final, just take us through that process.
Now, the American election process, for someone to be elected president, two things have to happen. Number one, a normal election has to happen whereby the popular vote is carried out. So citizens have to go to the polling booths and cast their votes. Now, those votes will be counted, but they don't count for much. Now, the critical part of the election process is the electoral college votes. Now, each of the 50 states have been assigned a particular number of electoral college votes. Now, when you win a state, you take all the the electoral college votes from there. The total number of votes, electoral college votes, is around 535. It's actually 535. No, it's 538. That is what it is. Now, for you to win the presidency, you must get 270 electoral college votes.
Yeah.
Now, you can win the popular votes and still lose the presidency. Now, okay, if we take Kenya, for example, if we had the electoral college system here, and we go back to 2013, Raila could have been president, depending on the number of electoral college votes we have allocated each county.
All right, I understand we do not have too much time. We'll have to wrap it up from there, but we will continue this discussion so that you can just give us the process. The process of electing a U.S. president. That is Abel Ayeko joining me in the studio, of course, explaining how the U.S. election works, some of the things that are put into the campaigns, the intrigues that are in both for the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, Russia votes Sunday in national, parliamentary and regional elections with the Kremlin party firmly in control and parties loyal to President Vladimir Putin expected to remain dominant.